So this past December, I went with my family to Costa Rica, which is a place known for ecotourism. And we visited the Arenal, which is Costa Rica's youngest and most active volcano. It attracts tons of visitors from all over the world who come hoping to catch a glimpse of some sensational eruption. I was hoping just to witness a little slow lava flow. But you might assume all this volcanic activity is very destructive to the region, and those major eruptions are truly devastating in their immediate aftermath. But there are actually far more benefits to the environment in the long term, because these volcanoes contribute an exceptionally rich and fertile soil that creates lush forests, incredibly productive farmlands, and even the resurrection of the dead. Yes, you heard that right. Resurrection of the dead. Now, I mentioned this region is incredibly lush and has countless trees, and in most cases, property boundaries are demarcated by rows of trees that look like these. I'm waiting for the magic to happen. Like these. Oh, no, that's not it. Like these. There we go. Okay. Third time's a charm. So, I didn't notice much about these trees at first, but look at them closely. And then I noticed that there's something very strange about these trees. What do you notice? First of all, the trunks are all identical in height, and they don't grow like normal trees. They seem to have a tuft in the middle, which is where new growth emerges, and these branches shoot up kind of strangely like a new plant coming out from the tuft in the middle. Let's zoom in a little and you can see it better. Oh, see, the magic worked that time. Now, those branches shoot up, and it does look very odd, as if there's like a new plant growing in the middle of the tree. So these don't look like normal trees, and that's because they're not. They didn't grow from a seed. These trees grew from fence posts. The volcanic soil is so fertile in the Arenal Valley that over time, fence posts can actually take root, sprout, and come back to life as these trees. You don't believe me? Look, here's a picture of some fence posts, and some of them grew out to be trees, and some of them didn't quite take root yet. But look at that. You can see that they were all fence posts, and then some of them sprout into trees. And this is what it looked like when it's just fences. There we go. That's a very early fence, clearly, before they all sprout into the after picture, which was our trees. There we go. Okay. So this just blew me away when I understood what I was seeing. Fence posts are decidedly dead wood. But I realized, given the right conditions, proper nourishment, and a little kiss of the miraculous, that what was once dead could come back to life. Resurrection of the dead. Now, this is a religious concept we usually associate with that other religion, not Judaism. But it's actually a core doctrine of ancient Jewish theology. It is first mentioned in the Hebrew Bible in the books of Isaiah and Daniel. Maimonides, the medieval philosopher, says that belief in resurrection of the dead is one of the 13 core principles of Jewish faith. And it's a part of the traditional Gevurot prayer, which we Jews recite every day. It's coming up in our prayers very soon. And it's fleshed out in the rabbinic sources, where it says, catch this, that in the Messianic age, when the Messiah comes, all the dead will be resurrected. And the resurrection will begin on the Mount of Olives, across from where the temple stood in Jerusalem. And all the dead bodies that are not already in Israel will miraculously be rolled through underground tunnels to the Holy Land. And this process is said to be very spiritually painful, even if you're dead. So, avoiding the rolling is one of the reasons that a lot of Jews choose to be buried in Israel. Another reason is so that you can be one of the first up when the time comes. Now, if you were raised a Reform Jew, this might be the first time that you're hearing about this core Jewish doctrine, because it's weird. and completely at odds with rationality. And early reformers had big problems with the theology of resurrection of the dead. And in the 1885 Pittsburgh Platform, which was our first declaration of reform principles, we rejected the idea of resurrection entirely. And we wiped it out where we could from our liturgy and other places. But modern Reformed Jews weren't the only ones who had trouble with this concept. There was controversy throughout Jewish history about the resurrection of the dead. Professor Neil Gilman suggests that as early as the 1st century BCE, there was so much conflict around this idea of resurrection that the rabbis decided to insert the prayer of the Gevurot into our daily liturgy as a response to those Jews who would challenge it. But early reformers, they didn't remove this prayer of the Gevurot altogether, like they did with some of the other prayers that we found objectionable, but rather, we just changed one word. The traditional Gevurot prayer speaks of God's power, saying, Mechaye metim, you resurrect the dead. You might notice those words, chaye, like life, you give life, mechaye, metim, met, dead people. So you give life to the dead, or you resurrect the dead. We switched one word so that instead it said mechaye hakol. You give life, chaye hakol, to everything. You give life to all. Now, you give life to all. That is an entirely unobjectionable thing to say. It's a positive statement, but it's also not particularly theologically inspiring. The audacity of the Gevurot prayer is that it asserts that God can resurrect the dead. And when I witnessed those fence posts that had come back to life, I saw an embodiment of Mechaye Metim. This bold prayer reminds us that God has the power to bring back to life something that we thought was dead, but it wasn't completely. It reminds me of my favorite little section of The Princess Bride, one of my favorite movies, where these two friends drag the hero Wesley to see Miracle Max because they need a miracle. And Inigo Montoya sets his friend, his inert body, on the table, and he says to Miracle Max, he's dead. And Miracle Max says to him, woo-hoo, look who thinks he knows so much. Your friend here is only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead. Sometimes a fence post can actually sprout back into a tree. God is up there laughing. It was only mostly dead. And if something is not all dead, but only mostly dead, there's still hope. And how powerful it would be to pray for something that you believe is beyond hope. It's often in those moments when we need to pray the most, when we need that language the most. So what would it mean for us today to pray for the resurrection of the dead? I don't think you have to take this prayer literally. I'm not expecting to see my beloved Grandma Frida, who died 25 years ago, resurrected. For that, I'm going to have to wait for the Messianic age. But metaphorically, I think we all know that God revives the dead in all manner of ways. I've seen parched, cracked, dry fields that can come back to life after the first rain. We know that hearts can stop and be resuscitated back to life. Even a religion can be resurrected. This week's Torah portion, Tetzaveh, describes a cultic Judaism of priests and sacrifices that completely died when the temple was destroyed. That is not how Judaism could be practiced anymore. And that could have been the end of Judaism as we knew it, but the rabbis reimagined what our faith could look like and revived what had died and brought forward a new Judaism that has survived countless attempts at our destruction. And Mechaye Metim you give life to the dead, is actually the bracha, the traditional blessing you're supposed to say when you see a friend that you haven't seen for over a year. It's as if your friendship has been revived back from the dead. Our ancestors understood how we could use that phrase, Mechaye Metim, as a metaphor. Now, I've been doing a lot of thinking since this trip about the Gevurot prayer, and I decided that for myself, I'm going to go back to the original traditional language of Mechaye Metim. You bring the dead to life. Because I've seen it happen. And because I want to be bold in my prayers and have them push my sense of what I think is possible, not just describe the reality that is before me. And I want to invite each of you to think about that choice as well. In 2007, which was over 100 years after the Reform movement removed Mechaye from its prayer book, the new prayer book that you hold in your hand, Mishkan Tefillah, inserted it back in as an option. So your prayer book looks like that. And you'll notice that there's a word in Hebrew and in the transliteration in the parentheses. So you have a choice. Reform Judaism is all about informed choice. And whatever you choose, at the very least, I hope that I have resurrected the theological debate for our community to discuss. So now you're informed, and the choice is yours.